Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 6 of Wolf Precision Incorporated's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. In this particular episode, we're going to be talking about the BAT actions and the new 2 actions that we're really excited to introduce, the BT and the BTE. We're going to be talking about in detail some of what makes BAT actions so special and things that are important to you, the shooter, to know. We're also going to be talking about rifle barrels, in particular Krieger barrels, why we use them. This is a really common conversation that we'll have with customers when they call in and ask to build a rifle, and they ask for a lot of the reasons as to why we choose Krieger, some of the pros and cons, and so we want to dive into that a little bit. And for the first time, we're going to do our mail call episode, in which we are going to take some questions that were emailed to us and try to cover some of those topics here at the show. So thank you again for joining us, and here we go. So the BT and BTE action, we're really excited to pass these along to you guys and let you know that these actions are now available. We had just received our first batch of BTs. The BT stands for BAT Tactical, and the BTE stands for BAT Tactical Elite. And there are some differences between the two, but we want to take some time to talk a little bit about them and ways that they benefit you, the shooter. So for the longest time, we had an action called the BAT Tactical Action, or BTA. This was a one-piece action with integral recoil lug and rail. There was a lot of special things and attention to detail that we did to the action to bring the bench rest model accuracy action into the world of tactical or sniper type matches, into the world of hunting. So the BT action, what is it? The longest time, our original BAT tactical actions, or BTAs, had an integral recoil lug and rail. This made them exceptionally strong. It made them a little more expensive because you're using bigger bar stock. It's a lot more machining time when you're cutting that type of action with the rail included into it. And then it adds a lot of weight to the action as well. So although it was a fantastic action for the type of shooting that I like to shoot, which is varmint hunting or some of the sniper matches and tactical matches that we like to shoot, it's heavy. And what we wanted to try to do is come up with another line of actions to try to reduce that weight and make one that would be like an alternative choice for someone who's more interested in using one of our quality actions or based on the same quality of the BAT tactical, but have a proper application and weight that would work well for building a lighter weight hunting rifle or even just a good starter action. So the BAT tactical, or BT, that we just received our first ones, and I'm really excited about it. There's so many things about this action that I like. Number one is the quality of the action hasn't changed. Everything about how this action is made, inside and out, clearances and tolerances, stay tried and true to our original BAT tactical action. First and foremost, we are always about accuracy first. So on top of that, what we did with this particular action is we left a recoil lug integral. We think that is a really important part to drawing out the best accuracy and not having any issues with the recoil lug being manufactured as a separate component. But we did want to remove the full-on steel rail that's integral into the action. And so the BT action has an aluminum rail that's attached, and it's also a little bit lighter weight cut action on top, appropriate, maybe more closer to a Remington 700. And so we were able to relieve a lot of that heavy steel off the top of the action and add the 20 MOA aluminum rail. And what that does is still allows us to have a very solid, very accurate, very stiff action, but at a weight reduction of nearly 1/4 pound. Now, 1/4 pound doesn't sound like all that much, but in the old saying is that ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain. When you carry a 14-pound rifle on a 6-day hunting trip, you get tired and worn out. So everywhere that you can look to try to alleviate weight and make that rifle as light as possible without sacrificing the accuracy is really, really important. When you get into the BAT Tactical Elite, it is still an integral recoil lug, an integral steel rail, 20 MOA built into it. It is a quarter pound heavier. It is designed really for the guy that's going all in, either for a really long range varmint rifle or a tactical / sniper type rifle where they just don't want to have that aluminum rail on top and a couple extra screws to have to worry about loosening up. It's not a necessity, and there's not an issue that is correcting. It's just removing one piece from the recipe that's not needed. But you do pay for it at an increase in cost in manufacturing as well as an increase in weight. So the BAT Tactical, where does it apply and what would you use it for? Well, right out of the gate, I think it makes a perfect platform for a hunting rifle. It runs smooth and slick like all BAT actions are known to do. The action itself is ion bonded or DLC coated. It's diamond-like coating. They call it DLC. It allows to protect the action from the elements, wear and tear. It also allows it that it's going to take the in and out of the scabbard, the rough bumps and bangs it's going to get in the field, and it's going to protect the action without showing that wear and tear as fast. The bolts on both actions are exactly the same, and they are melanited. That melanite is really important, A, to protect the bolt body, but also to give it a really nice black and slick finish while you're working the bolt. When we developed these actions and when we were working with BAT Machine to do the first BAT Tactical actions, we thought it was really important to use a stainless action and a chrome moly bolt. The reason we want a chrome moly bolt is that if you're in the field shooting for extended periods of time, or if you're in the rain and your bolt gets, just filthy dirty and you want to pull it out and wipe it down, if it isn't chrome moly, if it's a stainless on stainless action and bolt, and you wipe that bolt completely dry, you have a chance of ruining your action. You'll gall your lugs. And so with having the action stainless and the bolt chrome moly, it allows the bolt to possibly be run dry for longer periods of time without any damage. So if you wipe the bolt completely dry on a hunt to get all the mud, dirt, debris off of it and stick it back in your action, you're not going to gall your lugs. Now the firing pin assembly in the BT and the BTE, that's the designation for these two types of actions, they're exactly the same. It has a firing pin that can be removed without any tools, so you can pull your firing pin out and clean everything up. It also has a firing pin hole and firing pin that's designed to work well for small primers and large primers. So you'll hear sometimes people asking about having the firing pin hole bushed so they can, run a small primer or not have as much blowback into the firing pin hole. Well, BAT has sort of solved that with a one-size-fits-all with their proprietary design on the pin and the hole itself to try to accommodate both worlds with one firing pin so you don't have those issues to deal about. Now, I'm sitting here looking at the BT action, and I got to say right out of the gate, it is a really nice-looking action. But for some history with BAT Machine, and I want to talk a little bit more about this, is BAT Machine, I don't know if a lot of people know this, is actually the oldest custom action manufacturer in the country. They've been building custom actions longer than anybody else on the market. And BAT Machine started with going after bench rest. So their actions have always been about staying at that high-end quality. And the one thing that I love about BAT Machine is they've never, ever compromised that goal. So as they keep moving forward and building actions, and now going on decades, they still have that same mentality as that it's accuracy first. Everything that they do is about getting the best out of the action to get the shooter the best accuracy that they can. And so a lot of the machining techniques and the designs that they come up with, although it seems like in an industry where everybody's buying a CNC and buying a program and trying to cut their own actions and dumping them on the market like crazy, BAT Machine has stayed true to their mission of creating the best. And so there are those that have shot bats and had a chance to try them in the field, and then there are those that haven't. And the funny part is if you get people that have never really shot a bat action before, and particularly here at the school, we'll put one of the rifles out and tell the students, hey, we're on break. If anybody would like to put a couple rounds down through one of our custom rifles, you're more than welcome to. It's here on the line. And they work the bolt, and you can just watch them smile. And they're like, oh my God, I've never worked a bolt like that before. And then they start shooting some groups, and they start to smile. We had 2 school rifles on the line last year shooting factory ammunition, a father-son team, and we have some of their pictures on our website. We have at the school some really challenging targets. One of the targets we put up is very small, between a 1/4 and 1/3 inch dots, and there's 10 of them at 100 yards on this piece of paper. And what we're trying to do is teach them the art of fundamentals and the aim small and how much you should focus on single shot bullseyes and the benefits to the shooter. So the father-son team both had our custom rifles with the bat tactical actions on them, and shooting factory Hornady 6.5 Creedmoor ammunition, they both hit every single dot. Now, as a shooter, right out of the gate, I'm going to tell you that is actually fundamentally hard to do, to shoot that kind of accuracy. But when you take 2 rifles, 2 different shooters, and they're able to do it side by side and step with each other, that is a sign of quality. So you couldn't wipe the smiles off their faces. And of course, as fathers, sons always go, all of a sudden the talking starts to go, and some bets for some long range stuff, and the ribbing. So it was really fascinating to see. But to us, that's normal. But that comes with quality. Now you'll hear some custom action manufacturers, and I really do use that word loosely, and I don't try to offend anybody, but I'm not going to apologize for what other people do either. There's a lot of actions out there being flooded onto the market that, in my opinion, are no better than taking a factory Remington 700 and putting a barrel on it. Outside of just having a custom-made action, in other words, it was made by somebody other than a major manufacturer, that's really all you're getting. And so you'll hear these action manufacturers really go after bat machines sometimes, saying that, well, these are bench rest actions. They don't work for what we do. Well, that's not true at all. We've been shooting them here in sniper matches for more than 7 years. Bat Machine's been shooting them in the field for varmints for way longer than that. The trick to making an action run so smooth is having the bolt bore raceway and the action and the bolt body itself perfectly straight and true to each other. So you hear these action manufacturers say that, well, we leave 6 thousandths tolerance in the bolt bore raceway. 6 thousandths tolerance, on one side, 6 thousandths tolerance on the other, and they're leaving that room in there for dirt and debris. Personally, I don't think that's true at all, because we've had lots of those actions here, and I've built on lots of those actions. They have to leave those tolerances there, because if they tightened up the tolerances anymore, the bolts would bind. So either the bolt bore raceway isn't perfectly straight and true, the bolt body itself isn't perfectly straight and true, it could be coned a little bit, it could be offset a little bit, the surfaces might not be in complete parallel with each other, the bolt body could have warped in the heat treat process, the action itself could warp in a heat treat, but there's all these other things that get involved when you're making an action, that if they tried to tighten them up anymore, they would run and start to bind. And we've seen it here at the school. I'm not going to throw out any names, but a very high-end custom action. And you're working the bolt back and forth, and you can feel it binding. And so the ammunition that they try to go after Bat Machine with was there's no place for bench rest type tolerances in the shooting world that we're in. Well, that's not necessarily true. That's just somebody coming up with a great sounding excuse as to why they loosen theirs up. And maybe more importantly, not having to explain why they can't tighten theirs up. Now, going on to the Bat Tactical Elite, which is a newer designed action for us. Integrals are same quality, same clearances. There's no quality difference between the actions other than one is a little bit lighter, the BT, and one's a little bit heavier. The Bat Tactical Elite, or we're just going to call it the BTE from now on, has an integral 20-minute rail, has an integral recoil lug. The body itself is melanited. The bolt body is melanited. All that's done to protect the action as well as the bolt body itself from the wear and tear in the field and the elements. It has smooth sides now on rather than a round. So our BTE actions have these nice smooth cuts going up and down the sides of the action. And the other thing is the price point. So the BT action starts at $13.85. That is what we retail them for. The BTE actions are $16.45. And really the price isn't anything more than, because the BT action is round for the majority of the action, that can be machined a little bit more efficiently. And the bar stock that is required to turn the action can be a little bit smaller, so that's a little bit less expensive. Machining the aluminum rail compared to the steel rail is less machining time, less expensive. And in the end, it creates a lighter action with just a passed-on savings of a little bit less machining time, a little bit smaller bar stock, which gets you at that price point of $13.85. Other than that, they're exactly the same internally. So really, what was important for us is to have a lighter weight version of this action available to the customers, and it really allowed us to pass off some savings to them as well. To go a couple steps further with the actions, a couple things I like about it is we still have the option of what we call a T-slot extractor, which is actually one of my favorites. It's one of the strongest in gripping the case, and it ejects the case right out the action on the right side onto the ground. But the mini M16 is becoming really common. That's what's in most of our actions now. The ejector pin has been moved to the bottom of the bolt face. So as the loaded round is getting pulled out of the magazine, it doesn't bind up on that ejector pin that's up on the upper portion. So that's been relocated. The M16 extractor is pulled down off to the side of the bolt face a little bit more to allow it to eject with a little bit more clearance and less chance of it wrapping off of your windage knob. Now, some of the windage knobs out there are getting absolutely ridiculous in size, so that's not for every scope and how every scope is mounted, but we're doing everything that we can to alleviate that as a possible problem and bouncing an empty case back into your action, which can happen. So feeding and functioning is absolutely critical in a great shooting rifle, and we try to make every effort possible to make sure that these feed and function perfectly every time. That is why the extractor placement, the ejector pin, all of the stuff starts to get more important as you keep trying to increase the quality of the feeding and ejecting of the rifle. The bottom on all the actions is cut for a Remington 700, so we can put it into a lot of different chassis. A lot of different stocks are cut for it. And then the inlet on the bottom is for a 700 as well. So we can use a lot of things like the AI magazines. You can use an ADL or BDL floor plate. So it's the one cut that leaves the biggest and broadest options open to the customer to have some additional choices on how they want to feed the rifle. Now on to Krieger Barrels. So we build a lot with Krieger. It's 99.5% of our builds here are built on Krieger barrels. And there's reasons. And we have customers, when they call in, they ask, well, what barrels do you use and why do you recommend them and why do you use them? So I just want to take a little bit of time to talk about the barrels themselves here, point out a couple of things that we think may be of interest to you and maybe benefit you in the future when you're building your rifle. So Krieger barrels, their quality is top shelf. There's processes that they go through that allow them to make a better quality barrel. And one of the things that I like a lot about Krieger is the fact that they're a bigger company. And so that not only do they produce great quality barrels, but they also can produce them at a little bit higher volume, which allows us the ability to get barrels for the customers, not have to wait 6 months, 9 months, a year in some cases for a barrel. So why do we choose Krieger? Well, I try to stay stainless in all of our rifles. Krieger makes a really great stainless barrel. Several things that set them apart, though, is number one, they have a process in which they check and in cases cryogenically treat their steel to remove stress. As a person who likes to shoot a lot and as a person who likes to shoot long range, having stress in your barrel will ultimately introduce a nightmare issue for you. So when you have stress in a barrel, as the barrel heats up, it starts to move your point of impact. And the effects at long range are absolutely devastating. You're going to be all over the place. You're going to be over the target, under the target. Your barrel's heating up and cooling down and changing your point of impact. So having a stress-free barrel is really, really important to me. The other part about Krieger, and I don't know if you know this or not, there's two different ways that you can cut rifling in a barrel. So you can cut with high-speed steel, or you can cut with carbide. A lot of the other rifled barrels that you'll see out there, they use carbide. I prefer barrels that are cut with high-speed steel. So what's the difference between the two? Well, when you cut with carbide, you're able to make bigger cuts. You can run it faster and it's more efficient, but it's not as nice a finish. So carbide more tears than cuts or slices, but it's a more efficient process and allows you to move material quicker. High-speed steel is the opposite. High-speed steel, as a cutting tool, has to be turned at a slower rate and with lighter cuts, but it produces a nicer finish, a nicer surface finish. So one of the reasons, again, why I like Krieger barrels is because when they cut their rifling, they're using a high-speed steel. And as a machinist, that's a really big deal. I bore scope every barrel that comes in here. And I can tell you that they lap the daylights out of some of these other barrels to get rid of the tooling marks left behind from that carbide type cutting. And it's visible. And in some cases, we've actually rejected barrels and said, hey, this isn't to the quality that we need, and we're not going to invest our time and efforts into finishing this rifle with this barrel, only to know that there's a chance it's going to come back with a problem. So that's a whole nother reason why we use Krieger barrels. Now, I try to stay stainless steel, like I said earlier. That limits you to using the larger diameter barrels because Krieger does have a limit on how small they'll cut stainless before they insist that you go chromoly. So we try to stay above that threshold so we can build on stainless steel barrels. That's less wear and tear for you in the field to worry about, less chance of it rusting as fast like chromoly will, especially if you're building a rifle that's going to be outdoors a lot. But you can go chromoly and go smaller as far as that goes. And then you've got the curvature of the bore issue. And we've talked about this and how it affects accuracy. Not just accuracy because of the offset to the throat in traditional chambering, which is not how we build them anyway, but it also affects your dope on the other end as the barrel isn't perfectly straight. The bullet's not exiting the barrel perfectly straight in reference to the action in the scope. The curvature of the bore has an offset to it or a bow, and it can artificially start your bullet in any direction on the clock. And so in the process of how they gun drill and how they cut their barrels and how they lap their barrels, it really does create as straight a barrel as possible, eliminating the extreme outer edges of what can happen when you have a lot of curvature to the bore. Krieger barrels, bat machine. The reason we partner with these guys and the reason why we consider them actually very close friends is because they care about accuracy and they have the experience in the industry. You've got Bat Machine, who have been machinists for, some of them there for 40 and 50 years. You've got Krieger Barrels, who have the experience, long-term experience of building and maintaining rifles. And that really does matter, especially in a day and age where anybody with a credit card can run out and buy a CNC, purchase a couple programs, and start trying to make and produce actions. There's way more to it than that. And that's where the experience matters. You see, when everything goes perfect in the manufacturing process, it's not your ability to recognize that things are going right that the experience comes into play. When everything's working perfect, it doesn't really matter who's running the machine. It's having the experience to recognize when things are starting to go wrong that matters, and matters a lot. Knowing how the machine is supposed to sound, the vibrations, the harmonics, all of these things matter. The machine's talking to you while it's working. And if the person running that machine has the experience to recognize these things, he can keep that part running as perfect as possible while the machine is continuing on through all of these parts. That is why you have an issue where you have a group buy for this fantastic $899 action and everybody buys in. And next thing you know, the actions are getting delivered and you've got light primer strikes, the guns aren't firing, the triggers aren't seating properly. There's all these other issues that come into play. So experience matters, and having the people operating the machine that know what they're doing and how to recognize and keep those machines running as straight and true as possible is a huge game changer. When you get into like the bad actions, I know that they're, $1,385 and $1,645. That's a lot of money for an action. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But you're actually getting what you're paying for. And the extra couple dollars you're putting into it is that guarantee that the quality is there. Where when you start getting into the other actions, you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. You get your rifle built, and all of a sudden these issues start coming into play, and now you've turned what was supposed to be a great experience and hopefully what was going to be your future favorite rifle of a lifetime into a nightmare to even get to fire. There's a reason why that price is there, and I look at it like a long-term investment. Sure, $300 price difference in an action is a lot on the face of it. And I get it. I was a police officer and everything else through the 90s. And, we didn't make a lot of money back then. Most of us had 2 or 3 jobs just to be able to afford to work as a police officer. And so we had diapers, daycare, and formula. My shooting budget was pretty small. So I know the value of a dollar and how important each dollar really is. But when you get into that market to where you're going to build a custom rifle, if you look at it as a long-term investment over 5, 10, 15 years, that $300 really does come down to, a $30 a year difference for 10 years of enjoyment. That's actually not that bad. So just pay attention to some of that stuff. Be careful. Ask the right questions. And before I forget, this podcast is going to go live right around January 24th, 2019. And I did want to say that we're going to be at the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, February 2nd through the 10th. And joining us at the booth is Mike from Krieger Barrels. So we're really excited that Mike's going to fly the whole way in from Wisconsin and join us at our booth at the Great American Outdoor Show. We will be in the gun hall. He will be there February 2nd, 3rd, and part of the 4th. So that's a great opportunity for you guys, if you're planning on coming in, is to come on in and stop by and say hi to Mike and ask him a lot of these questions, because I think they're really important to know and to understand. All right, to finish this podcast, though, we want to do our first mail call. So we're asking customers, of course, to email us any questions that they might have or people that they'd like us to talk to. And so we want to go over a couple questions that we received and maybe try to give you some answers for them. So we have a question here from Charles B. Charles B. had asked, I hunt groundhogs at long range and shoot some deer. Some suggestions for future podcasts would be hunting bullets versus bullets that you use for competition. So he's sort of asking, what we use for bullets when we shoot. And I will say that I try to simplify the process, the difference between the hunting bullets and the competition bullets. One of the reasons why I like the old Hornady Amax or the new Hornady ELD is I hate to have 2, 3, 4 loads worked up for a rifle. That particular load, using an ELD, I could go out and shoot competitions with. That is a fantastic varmint bullet. So whether it's, coyotes or woodchucks, great varminting bullet. And then I've also used them on deer-sized animals, and I think they work great. So I try to pick a bullet that covers a lot of things that I'll do with that particular rifle. And in this case, with a competition rifle, it's probably going to be more varmint hunting, maybe an occasional deer out of a deer stand somewhere. And so I try to use a bullet that maybe covers a little bit more of the playing field, a little bit less work for me. And the big game stuff, of course, then you're going to get into using a tougher bullet. You're going to get into like the Eodx is what, I like to shoot or recommend. I'm a big fan of Hornady for a lot of different reasons. So the Hornady Eodx might be a great choice, and maybe even just shoot factory ammo for that stuff just because it's readily available and you're not going to shoot that much of it. Now, you might ask, well, why do I like Hornady Eodx and the Hornady Amax or ELD, they call it now? When the Amax came out through the mid-2000s, I shot a lot of 308s. And when I would pop open my box at the range at a match, all my bullets would have these little red tips. I shot 155 grain Amaxes. And, guys would look like, well, why are you shooting an Amax at a match? The going standard was the Sierra boat tail hollow point. And I would tell them, look, the reason I shoot these tipped bullets is I am looking for a consistent BC from shot to shot. So back in the day, you could buy hollow points everywhere. But when you'd open a box of hollow points up and you look at the tips were all different sizes. The openings were all different. And at a distance, extended distance, I really did believe that made a difference of your shot going a little bit high and a little bit low from shot to shot because I thought it was manipulating the BC. So the reason I stayed with tipped bullets is because it lowers that standard deviation from shot to shot on the ballistic coefficient itself. So the bullets are going to fly truer to each other, one shot right after the other. And that's really why I started shooting Amax to begin with, and now shoot the ELDs. And then, of course, now you've got the Eodx's, which are a tipped hunting bullet, which I like a lot. Another question from Charles is cleaning. How often do you do it, and what do you use? And that is a great question. When we build a custom rifle, ours are built a little bit differently, so we don't have the burrs and everything in the throat that you would traditionally see in chambering. So our rifles don't require, when you get it new, to shoot and clean, shoot and clean, shoot and clean. Shoot one shot, clean it, shoot 3 shots, clean it, shoot. Traditionally, that has been thought of trying to either break in the barrel or really break in the throat. And that started with guys trying to, or at least in their minds, trying to shoot the burrs out of the throat. If the burrs aren't there to begin with, there's really no reason to do it. And so what we tell our clients when we have our rifles shipped out is, go to the range and enjoy 25 to 50 rounds and clean it. Next time you go out, shoot 25, 50 rounds through it, enjoy a really nice day at the range, and then clean it. After that, don't clean it again for 100 rounds. After that, don't clean it again for 150. After that, don't clean it again until it needs to be cleaned. I mean, we have rifles here at the school that we ran for 400 rounds in a row. And outside of just being really carboned up a little bit, they shot about as good on 400 rounds as they did when they were brand new and clean. And so when you get hand-lapped barrels like Krieger, you get a really nice clean-cut throat, like the way that we do it, and a straight throat. You don't have to do that shoot and clean stuff like you see. Now, when it comes to the cleaning chemicals themselves, here's a big one. I am a big fan of BoreTech products. So we use the BoreTech carbon remover, the eliminator, and they make a copper remover called CU4 or CU2 or something like that. The reason I like BoreTech products so much is that they don't hurt the barrel. A lot of the stuff you're buying out there, especially ammonia-based, a lot of these chemicals, once you put them in your barrel, start to work and damage the material that the barrel is made out of. And the funny part is you can put a wet patch through a barrel, and literally, I can give you 500 patches. And you can run all those 500 patches through that barrel, and they'll still be wet in there against the lands and grooves. Remember, your barrel's spun in one direction, a right-hand twist, so the patch is riding on one edge. And the reason I don't like these really harsh chemicals is because unless you use a lot of flushing agents like isopropyl or several patches of oil afterwards to try to get all those harmful chemicals out of your barrel, you stand a chance of shortening the life of that particular barrel a lot. We've seen it with a 6BR we built years and years and years ago. At about 1,000 rounds, the gun gave up shooting. And looked in there with a bore scope, and it looked like somebody tattooed the lands and grooves. They were just all marked up, and it was etched. And so when I asked him, I said, what kind of cleaning chemicals were you using? And he explained to me, and not only that, but he did shoot bench rest, and they clean a lot. So his barrel was exposed to a ton. We had another customer from New York come down to our shooting school a couple of days early. He had purchased a 300 Win Mag, and it was shooting absolutely awful, and he couldn't get it zeroed. So I said to him, hey, come on, we'll check it out for you, and we'll get it all squared away before the class starts. So he come on in a day or two early for the class. We went to the range. Sure enough, I couldn't even keep it on a piece of paper at 100 yards. So I thought, well, right away, maybe it's the scope. We swapped the scope out. And by the way, this was a factory gun, not one of our custom rifles. So we swapped the scope out, and still all over the place. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out what was going on with it. I did bring a bore scope, and I bore scoped the rifle barrel out. And then I asked him the question, what did you do to this rifle? And he was using this chemical, and blue kept coming out every time he kept patching it out. So he'd scrub it. It was a new rifle. And then with a bronze brush, he'd scrub it, and then he would patch it out, and then he'd keep getting a little bit of blue, so he thought there was still fouling in it. So eventually, he turned the rifle upside down, plugged the bore, and filled the barrel with this chemical, and it basically destroyed the lands and grooves. It was all etched up and eaten away. So I don't want to put anything in my barrel that's going to harm it in any way, shape, or form. And then I try to keep a logbook. This goes sort of hand in hand with the cleaning process. Each rifle is different, so factory rifles really might need to be cleaned more often than a hand-lapped custom barrel. It might foul out faster. And what I try to do is I use the accuracy as a guideline. So if I'm shooting a rifle for a couple of days, I am not going to clean it every time I get back home from the range. I might shoot it for days and days, just keep an accurate tally of how many rounds have been put through the rifle since it was last cleaned. And then all of a sudden, if I start to notice my groups open up, then I'll look at the round count, and let's just say I had a particular Savage many years ago. It needed clean about every 95 rounds. The groups would open up a little bit. But we don't see that a lot with our custom barrels or the hand-lapped barrels here at all. So when it comes to chemicals, please be careful in what you put in your rifle. It is a surefire way to ruin that great investment in a hurry. All right, and this next question is from Chuck in Idaho. Chuck had asked about barrel harmonics, twist rate, and maybe to comment a little bit on the benefit of the new Wildcat cartridges or something like the new 6.5 PRCs. So what we look for with barrel harmonics and twist rate, those are both great questions. And then we'll touch base on the 6.5 PRC because we're actually testing it as we speak. So harmonics plays a lot with accuracy. The little bit heavier barrels, of course, is a little bit damper harmonics. What we're talking about is how the barrel vibrates when it's shot. And we do believe wholeheartedly that the shorter barrels are a little more accurate because when you shorten that barrel, you tighten up the harmonics of it. So the shorter barrels are, in our opinion, a little bit more accurate as far as in total. We see this a lot from the sniper matches from 15 years ago to today. Back through the mid-2000s, it wasn't uncommon to see a 26, 28, and even a 30-inch barrel on the firing line. At the modern matches now, it's not uncommon to see 18 to 22-inch barrel shooting. And what we found is taking 4 inches off the barrel from 26 to 22, which is two of our common barrel lengths, doesn't really lose much velocity. We have both lengths at the school for school rifles, and the velocity difference is really about 30 or 40 feet per second. So we're not giving up much of anything in velocity, but by us shortening that barrel up, we can make it a little bit more accurate because it does have a tendency to dampen the harmonics. That also goes into play when you get into putting a suppressor on a 22-inch barrel. You get a little bit of that speed back because you do pick up some velocity through the suppressor, but that weight of the suppressor on the end of the barrel actually dampens the harmonics as well, which is one of the reasons why we think it helps in the accuracy department. Now, twist rates, this is a good subject to talk about because if you are getting a custom rifle built or getting into a particular caliber, depending on the weight of bullet you want to shoot, this becomes a big deal. We shoot a 1-in-8 twist in 6.5 calibers. That allows us to shoot up to 147 grain bullet and stabilize it. So the faster the twist rate, going from like 1-in-10, one twist per 10 inches, 1-in-8, one twist, one full rotation per 8 inches, the faster that is, the heavier bullet we can shoot out of that particular caliber. Now, in my opinion, it's a one-way street. You would be better served in most cases to have the ability to shoot the heavier bullets because at long range, that's what we want to shoot anyway. We're not going to shoot 40 grain VMAXs out of a 22-250 to shoot to 1,000 yards. We're going to shoot a 75 or 80 grain bullet. So those particular rifles are something like 1-in-7.7. And then if you want to shoot the 90 grainers, you might have to do a 1-in-6, 1-in-6.5, something like that. I can still shoot 40 grainers out of that fast twist though. So I've got a 1-in-7.7 twist to shoot a 75 grain bullet. But we've tested this and have shot 40 grain bullets. And the bullet is jumping out there forever to get into the land of grooves because we have a longer throat for the longer bullets. But it's shot lights out. In some cases, you'll hear, guys say we're over-stabilizing the bullet. You're spinning it faster than what it needs to be. My opinion with that is I think back in the day, guys tried to get the twist rate that was just enough twist rate without overdoing it because they were trying to maximize the velocity along with stabilizing the bullet. So if they needed a 1 in 8.25 twist to stabilize this 142 grain bullet, whatever, they'll get the twist set up just fast enough to stabilize the bullet with nothing more. In theory, that the less revolutions the bullet has to make in the barrel, the more velocity you're going to get out of it. Now, I don't really get involved into that bench rest concept and how they try to figure out the optimal twist rate. I'm a shooter. I shoot everything, from tactical and sniper matches to varmint hunting. I just want to know that I can shoot the bullet I'm after, but I can tell you from experience that I can still shoot light bullets out of a fast twist. And even though in technically speaking, I'm spinning it a little faster than what most people like, they still shoot lights out. So I have no problem with that whatsoever. Here's where having people like Krieger to refer to all the time helps a lot too, because there's a whole new onslaught of bullets coming onto the market all the time. And you're getting a lot of really heavy bullets now. For example, the 90 grain 224 caliber bullets that guys are shooting out of the 22 Creedmoor, which is I'm hoping to build one for myself soon. These are really heavy bullets. And so having Krieger as a resource, and I'll do this a lot, especially for calibers I'm not super familiar with or a new bullet that we haven't shot or played with much yet. And then I'll say, hey, Mike, hey, Shay, this is the bullet we're planning on shooting in this caliber. Here's what I'm thinking twist-wise, but do you have anything you want to add to that or something else that we should talk about before we order this? So having them as a resource and sort of a business partner on that end pays dividends. So all else fails, call the barrel manufacturer and just verify that you're getting the right twist rate for the projectile that you want to shoot. And then last but not least, the 6.5 PRC. This is actually what I'm really excited about. So we have this in testing right now. So it passed all testing at Bat Machine. It's now here. We're building it up to put 500 factory rounds through it here for some work of our own. And it is a fantastic cartridge. So the 6.5 is one of those magic bullets that just is extremely accurate because of how long the bullet is. It's really tough, the 6.5 caliber, because it's a really high sectional density. In other words, the lead core is so thin compared to the length. So 30 caliber is much wider, has a wider lead core. So the 6.5 has some of the highest sectional density. That's toughness of a lot of your other bullets out there. That is why the 6.5 Swede, which is the most popular moose cartridge in Europe, shoots 140 or 150 grain bullets, and they're knocking moose down with them. And it's a very tough bullet. And by the way, the speeds they're running, because I used to shoot a 6.5 Swede, it's 2,500 feet per second. You're way slower than a 6.5 Creedmoor. So if they can knock a European moose down with that, I think we're okay with moving up through the cartridge choices that we have. And then the 6.5 PRC, we're just getting started on it, but we're talking about shooting a bullet that's, 147 grain ELD match with a BC that's almost 0.7 at speeds of over 3,000 feet per second. From what I'm reading, that's fantastic dope for distance. I mean, absolutely incredible. The response that we heard back from Bruce when he was testing it out there was just how low and mild the recoil was. And that part didn't surprise me. So I shot a 264 Win Mag forever for my hunting rifle, and I liked it because it was more of a push than a punch when it came to recoil, and it was really mild. I mean, it made a hell of a boom when you shot it. It sounded like a cannon going off, but it was such a mild rifle to shoot. The 6.5 PRC, I am really excited about it because it's going to bridge that gap where the 6.5 Creedmoor sort of starts to fall off at a little bit more extended ranges. And now you're getting into some lot longer distances at these matches at 12, 13, 1,400 yards. I think that's going to be really incredible. So I'm actually really anxious to do some mile shooting with it here once we finish up our testing. So the 6.5 PRC, way to go, Hornady. I really think it's almost like the 6.5 Creedmoor Magnum, and I think that cartridge is going to do some amazing stuff in the field over the next couple of years and make an amazing hunting rifle. Amazing hunting rifle. So We'll post up some pictures as we get our testing going and we get the rifle finished up and on the line. We're just waiting for our ammunition to show up. And as soon as we get some information on it, we'll post some pictures on our Facebook page. We'll try to keep you up to date as that testing keeps going along. But that's actually one caliber that I'm really excited about. And the other caliber, just to throw it out there, is the 22 Creedmoor. So you guys know me, I'm a really big 223 fan when it comes to shooting distance. Super mild recoil, lots of fun to train and practice with. The 22 Creedmoor, the ballistics on that is just out of this world. I can't imagine what it's going to be like shooting 88 grain ELD matches with a BC of 550 at a speed of 3,200 feet per second. What that's going to do to a woodchuck at 700, 800, 900 yards, it's going to be fascinating. If you get a chance to run the numbers on that caliber in a ballistics program, take a look at it. It's absolutely amazing. And I just heard through the grapevines that Hornady is going to be producing 22 Creedmoor brass, which is fantastic. So a couple calibers I'm excited that are coming out. One's already here in testing. So we'll give you some more feedback as these things keep moving along. So this is coming to the end of episode 6. I'd like to thank you all for joining us and spending some time with us here and listening to all the cool things that we want to chit-chat about. Again, don't be afraid to check us out on Facebook. Don't be afraid to shoot us an email, some things that you would like to talk about. We're going to try to introduce this mail call into about every podcast to try to answer a couple questions on the air. If we read your question on the air, please include your name and mailing address with your question to us, and we will send you a free t-shirt. So that is our way of saying thank you for reaching out to us, as well as for joining our podcast here. So again, my name is Jamie Dotson. I am your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.